Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to East Central Missouri and the world, and welcome to the James Strong Show podcast number 316. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for making us a part of your day. I appreciate it. This podcast was recorded on the morning of Saturday, May the 27th, from the James Strong Studio in Western St. Charles County. That's right, a Saturday morning podcast. Haven't done those in a long time. I've just had stuff going on the weekend. So we've had Sunday podcasts. We've had Friday night podcasts. We've had just about everything but Saturday morning podcasts. I mean, the last 2 weekends, 2 weekends ago was Mother's Day. So we did stuff with the trophy wife, made sure she was happy for the weekend. Last weekend was our 40th wedding anniversary. So we did stuff for that. We went downtown, into downtown St. Louis, and basically stayed downtown, watched a ball game, had some dinner, and had a great time, had a good time. But there's nothing going on this weekend. In fact, well, there is. I mean, it's a 3-day weekend. It's the Memorial Day weekend. We get Monday off, and I'm doing the podcast this morning, working on the Jaguar with Dad later this morning, and pool party with the whole family on Sunday, relaxation, another pool party on Monday. Life is good. So a full weekend for the 3-day weekend, for the Memorial Day weekend. And and by the way, we don't say Happy Memorial Day, okay? I mean, sure, Happy 4th of July, Happy Christmas, Merry Christmas, whatever. Memorial Day is remembering the war dead. So sure, we get the weekend off. We get a 3-day weekend. We're going to barbecue. We're going to have a good time. But before you say Happy Memorial Day, just remember what the day is, okay? You can't say Happy Remembering the War Dead Day. It just doesn't ring true. I know it's May the 28th, and we're well into, I guess, actually May the 27th, and we're into summertime, basically. Memorial Day weekend is the kickoff of summer. But friends, it was 49 degrees at the house this morning. So I know it's getting there, but we still have nice, cool mornings. But I'm not complaining, because actually these nice, cool mornings, house is open. You can hear the owls hooting at night through the open windows, save a little bit on the electricity bills, no heat, no air conditioning, and it's just been a marvelous weather pattern here in East Central Missouri. The topic of today's podcast, sports, and UFOs. Okay? I mean, what was the old adage? If you throw the false flag up, then the public won't know about what's really going on. In other words, keep them occupied with stuff that isn't important. And to some extent, we do that in this country. Sometimes we think our government is just on autopilot, and it kind of is when you compare it to other countries in the world. But you know what? We work hard, and life is difficult. So we love our sports in this country. And I'm going to do a couple of sports stories, one on an old-time throwback baseball player, one on, I guess, almost like, if you're a big sports fan and like to watch sports on television, you need to listen to this podcast, but you're not going to like a thing that I'm saying, because, friends, watching sports on television is about to get very, very expensive. That's part 2 of the podcast. Part 3 is big UFO sightings in Southern California, and we'll talk about that. So sports, and UFOs. One more thing before we get to that, though. There's a birthday today of a guy who there will never be another one like him, Henry Kissinger. That's right, Henry Kissinger. Not only is he still alive, but he's 100 years old today. Now, who was Henry Kissinger? If you're under 30, you may not know. But Henry Kissinger, I mean, he's synonymous with U.S. diplomacy. And from opening the door to communist China, to plotting an endgame to the Vietnam War, to unapologetically backing dictators who are anti-Soviet, like Augusto Pinochet in Chile. I mean, Kissinger wielded influence like few before him or after him, serving as both top diplomat and national security advisor to Presidents Richard Nixon and Gerald Ford. The full 8 years, folks. That just doesn't happen anymore. But who is Kissinger? I mean, he's instantly recognizable with those thick glasses and sharp witted monotone that never lost its touch, his native German accent. I mean, he was an academic first because the guy was sharp as a tack. And he's still active. He was actually at the Bilderberg conference this week. So, yeah, he's still active in world affairs, and people still listen to Henry Kissinger, even though he's 100 years old. Now, the other thing Kissinger has done recently is he's bucking the view of most U.S. policymakers. How, you ask? Kissinger's calling for diplomacy, I guess I should say, that'd be a better word, with Russia on a ceasefire in the Ukraine. He argues that Moscow's already suffered a strategic defeat. The war is over. They've lost. It's time to negotiate. Now, Kissinger was long despised by the left, probably because he worked for Nixon and Ford. But he's come into good graces with the mainstream Democratic Party. In fact, Hillary Clinton, after serving as Secretary of State, called Kissinger a friend and said she relied on his counsel. But for many, Kissinger was seen as an unindicted war criminal for his role in, among other things, expanding the Vietnam War to Cambodia and Laos, supporting military coups in Chile and Argentina, to greenlighting Indonesia's bloody invasion of East Timor back in 1975, and turning a blind eye to Pakistan's mass atrocities during the 1971 war between Pakistan and Bangladesh during Bangladesh independence. Remember, there used to be a West Pakistan and an East Pakistan on either side of India. East Pakistan is now Bangladesh, and that war was very, very bloody. Now, there's a guy, Reed Calman Brody, who says, and he's actually a veteran human rights lawyer. Brody says, to me, there's no doubt that Kissinger's policies have caused hundreds of thousands of deaths and have destroyed democracy in many countries. In fact, he points to Chilean dictator Augusto Pinochet as number one. In fact, Brody also points out in a recording released over Kissinger's objections, which Kissinger tells Nixon that the Air Force had orders in Cambodia to hit, quote, anything that moves. Brody says that, reminds us that indiscriminate bombing of civilians is a war crime. So, again, many people thought Kissinger was a war criminal. But he did win the Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, he was co-awarded the Peace Prize for negotiating a ceasefire in Vietnam alongside Lee Duc-Tho, the head of Hanoi. And, I mean, the guy got a Nobel Peace Prize. Maybe he got a Peace Prize for a war he accelerated. That's another story for another day. But happy birthday, Henry Kissinger, 100 years old today. Today's essay, sports, and UFOs. Baseball is a different game, folks, than it used to be. I've said this for a long time. Baseball is kind of ruled by the statisticians nowadays. I'll use the St. Louis Cardinals as an example. Conventional wisdom is they fired manager Mike Shildt after a very successful run with the Cardinals, mainly because he wouldn't do the bidding of the front office. He wanted to do things his way. Well, he wasn't in charge. They fired him. He bucked the system. He bucked the system so much that nobody has hired him. So here's a very successful manager who was fired and nobody will hire. Mainly because he doesn't do what the front office says, and no front office wants to hire him. Baseball's run by statisticians nowadays, the StatCast crowd, okay? But not all baseball players adhere to that philosophy. There's a guy in New York, plays for the Mets, Pete Alonso. He has a simple way of looking at a typical baseball season and the way to play the game. In fact, in a data-driven era that demands baseball players closely examine the details of their performance, Alonso just says he does his best work when he's not thinking too much about it. The first baseman who's proved himself to be one of the game's most prolific hitters. He partakes in amenities that are part of today's games, like he's got his own swing coach, and he does annualized granular information provided to him by the Mets. But he only takes it so far. And there's a retro simplicity to the way Alonso approaches the game when he steps on the field. In fact, his simple approach to an increasingly complex game is playing benefits. He's in his 5th season and having a great year. In fact, his simple presence to an increasingly complex game, however, does stand in contrast to many other contemporary hitters who have a studious presence in the batter's box. Now, Alonso isn't a dunce, but he often benefits by kind of acting like one. Now, basically, Alonso hits the ball hard, and he's a true first baseman in an era where many players at that position, they're toggle between first base and the outfield, where you play, you play left-handers against right-handers. You want to keep the bat in, but you want to put another guy out there. Basically, bat first, defense second. But Alonso's just a first baseman. That's all. And a DH. And he also stands out from his contemporaries in his willingness to participate in the home run derby every year. You ever notice with the home run derby, a lot of the big home run hitters don't participate because they're afraid they're going to get hurt while they're playing. While they're basically taking extra batting practice, they're afraid they're going to get hurt. Okay. Alonso says, look, I'm a bit of a throwback player. I'm a guy who drives the ball out of the yard and drives a bunch of guys in. I compete and I want to win, and you can't win baseball games without scoring runs. Simple. What's his success been? Well, again, in an era where baseball players get hurt, Alonso played in 160 games last year for the Mets. 160 out of 162. He only missed 2 games, okay? And he started at first base for 133 of them. He doesn't want to hear about days off. He doesn't want to be the DH. That's what his manager, Buck Showalter, says. He doesn't want to overthink anything, which is hard to accomplish in today's game. Nice compliment by your manager. Alonso says the force of his work in the batting cage, the focus of his work in the batting cage, is to help him make better decisions in the batter's box, attempting to cut down on his swings against pitches on the edges of the strike zone. Let me translate that for you. He doesn't swing at bad pitches. Simple, but effective. Alonso reported to spring training in better shape. He lost 10 pounds on the off season. And now he's more agile at first base. He can move around better. I guess not. He's carrying around 10 pounds less pork. So naturally, he's going to be doing a better job in the field. He's the heart of the Mets team that needs production from its stars to compete in the National League East, which is a tough division, unlike the Cardinals' National League Central. And they've had troubles with the Mets. Yeah, their payroll is about $500 million. I didn't stutter. Yes, their payroll is about $500 million, and many of their great players, the ones being paid all the money, are hurt. But Alonso's production seems unaffected by the pressures on him and the Mets this season. He keeps on slugging away and playing a good first base. So let's review the plan that Pete Alonso uses. Get into shape, don't swing at bad pitches, and practice, practice, practice. Friends, you can use all the Moneyball StatCast statistics that you want. But baseball is a very, very simple game. A simple, basic game. Get in shape, don't swing at bad pitches, and practice, practice, practice. That's 95% of it. Sure, if you want to do things like, okay, this pitcher throws a lot of breaking pitches to the outside of the plate, and I don't hit breaking pitches outside very well. Okay, I need to watch for that. That's good information. Okay. But to say, you know what, this batter or pitcher throws breaking balls to the outside of the plate. I have trouble hitting those, so I'm not going to swing at anything. I mean, that's ridiculous. Baseball is a simple game made too complex by the StatCast crowd. It's a sports game, not a video game. People point to the Oakland A's. They've had success spending no money and doing that whole Moneyball StatCast thing. They have. In fact, they've spent no money, and instead of being at the bottom of the barrel where they should be, they've been somewhere in the middle. So all things considered, they've played decent by spending no money. They've never won a championship with that formula. If you want to win, get in shape. Don't swing at bad pitches. Practice, practice, practice. See the ball, hit the ball. End of story. Sports, and UFOs, part 2 of sports. Do you like sports? It doesn't matter if you don't care about baseball, basketball, football, but if you've had cable TV at any point in the last 30 years, you've given sports teams and sports leagues lots and lots of money. How, you ask? How much, you ask? Well, let's go back to 2013. That's a long time ago. 10 years ago. ESPN hit cable subscribers with a carriage fee of $5.54 a month. Okay? That's 34 times what the average channel pays. What does the average channel charge? 16 cents a month. ESPN got $5.40 a month. That was in 2014. Now, as more and more people start cutting the cord for cable, that number rose. In fact, last year, it was $7.64 a month. That's what cable companies paid ESPN for the privilege of carrying their station. Now, last week, the Wall Street Journal reported that Disney, they own ESPN, is actively preparing to make ESPN a standalone streaming service available only to subscribers. Wow. This seismic move would untether ESPN from the cable model that it has. And in many ways, actually, you could argue that ESPN has been propping up cable for years. In an on-demand world, live sports, along with award shows and coverages of breaking news events, have been one of the few salvations of the cable world. Why, you ask? Because nobody watches live television. You record it and fast forward through the commercials, right? Can't do that with a sporting event. Can't do that with an award show. And of course, breaking news, you can't do that with breaking news either, because it's live right now. You don't want to play a replay of a game that was on 2 hours ago and you know the results of. You don't want to play breaking news of the Academy Awards because you just found out who won, okay? Unless you want to watch Will Smith smack around comedians, okay? Chris Rock and others. But you could argue that ESPN has been propping up cable for years. So what if they charge 34 times what everyone else does? They're worth it. But consider this. There's a major reason why the NFL has dominated television networks rating. And it's because, again, it's a live show. You can't fast forward through the commercials because it's live. You don't want to tape it and play it later. But it was very clear this couldn't last forever. There's just too many cord cutters out there for ESPN to stay behind the cable wall much longer. Now, the new product that they're touting, tentatively called Flagship, would be a vast expansion of the current ESPN Plus. That's a hardcore subscription, okay? That's off of the cable. It was kind of like I guess, what would you call it? Maybe a trial, okay? And it's turned out to be very successful. I mean, you can see low-level college games. You can see documentaries like 30 on 30 on ESPN Plus, but it doesn't give you ESPN proper. So you pay all this extra money, but you still have to get your cable to watch ESPN, or the premium events that are on ESPN2 and other networks. But you can't watch the NBA Finals on ESPN Plus. You still need the cable subscription for that. Now, Flagship, according to Wall Street Journal, will give viewers everything in one package. Now, this will have huge ramifications for the cable business model. Some think it could be the death knell of the entire cable enterprise, because for years, non-sports fans have been sports fans by paying the hidden $8 a month for a channel that they don't watch. But if ESPN is separating from the cable model, That's $8 a month that'll have to be made up somewhere else. This plan appears to be changing sports fans a lot, charging up sports fans a lot more. Now, how much will they be charging sports fans? Well, MSG Plus, Madison Square Garden Plus, they charge $30 a month. And it's hard to imagine ESPN would settle for less than that. In fact, you would consider it a lot more. Because consider what ESPN pays for the sporting events they broadcast. What do you think ESPN pays in rights for these big events? Check this out. ESPN broadcasts the college football playoffs. That's 11 games. That's right. They broadcast 11 college football games for the college football playoffs. Just 11 games. They pay $2.2 billion a year to broadcast those 11 games. Now, doing the math, you got to figure they're going to charge at least $50 a month for the streaming service just to watch ESPN. So you figure, okay, great. Okay, $50 a month, I can watch all the sports I want. Not so fast. Because ESPN is not the only channel airing sports that many fans deem essential for viewing. They don't have baseball. If you're a baseball fan and you want to keep up with the Yankees on the YES network, that's another $24 a month. Okay, if you're, let's say, you're outside of the region, okay, you got to pay. You got to buy MLB TV. That's $25 a month. You like the NBA? You got to buy an NBA League Pass, $15 a month. NHL, $70 a year. Want to watch the World Series? You don't have cable? You need Sling TV. That's $40 a month. You want to watch major indoor soccer or major soccer league, or a marquee night Friday night baseball game? Apple TV, $7 a month. Oh yeah, and let's say you like Big Ten basketball or Premier League soccer, football they call it in the UK, $5 a month for Peacock. You want to watch NFL on TV? That's not on Sunday. That's not ESPN. You got to buy a NFL Sunday ticket, $349 a year on YouTube. Okay, so now you can watch all the football games, right? Except for Thursday night, because that's on Amazon Prime. So you got to pay Amazon Prime, whatever that costs. It's $100 a year, $150 a year, I think. Jeff Bezos and Amazon, they broadcast only the Thursday night football game. So what is that, 16 games a year? He's paying $1 billion a year for that. So they've got to start charging money. Now you add it all up, and some sports fans might be paying between $400 and $500 a month just to watch sports. Think about that. And these networks really think people are going to pay that. Some will. Most will not. Friends, $400 or $500 a month? That's a car payment, okay? Just to watch some dopey sports. Now, you can watch all the sports you want now through, you used to be able to watch all the sports you want through a single cable subscription. That's going to go away. Now, there's cosmic justice to this, of course, because think about it. Sports fans have been enjoying relatively cheap prices for years. I mean, it used to be free on regular network TV, but now it's still been relatively cheap, thanks to the free ride provided by non-sports fans. But the price to follow your favorite team will get higher and higher, which is an excellent way to turn off the next generation of fans. How high can streamers pay? I think what'll happen is they'll cut their own throats. Do you really think that 200 million Americans are going to pay $400 to $500 a month to watch sports? Won't happen. And what happens when people stop watching stuff? It's pretty basic. It's pretty simple. They do other things. Sports is fine. Sports is wonderful. Sports is entertaining. Sports is a good release. But friends, there's umpteen bajillion other things to do than watch sports. You don't believe me? Case in point. The number 2 television market in the country is Los Angeles. The number 1 sporting event for television is football. For a lot of years, LA had no football team. And that's because they would not build, the city wouldn't build them a stadium. The cities build everybody else a stadium. The NFL says, well, you won't build us a stadium. We'll just leave. And the Rams came to St. Louis. The Raiders went back to Oakland. Now they're in Las Vegas. So L.A. had no football team. And nobody cared. They just did something else. I'm here to tell you, I don't watch a ton of sports anymore. I used to watch a lot. I probably watch 10% of the sports that I used to. I will watch an occasional Cardinal game if it's on. I will watch an occasional Formula One race if I'm not doing something on a Sunday morning. I may tune into an NBA final basketball game or maybe a college game if a team I like is playing for basketball. That's about it. And if I have to pay a bunch of money for that, I'm out. I'll just do something else. And I think a lot of other people will too. So the day of reckoning is coming upon us. If you're a big sports fan, be prepared to do one of two things. One of three things, I should say. Either fork out a car payment to watch your sports, forget about sports altogether, or compromise and just watch a little bit. Interesting things. And is that greed? Probably. I mean, Shohei Ohtani, the baseball player who plays for the California Angels, LA Angels of Anaheim, whatever they're calling him this week. He's one of the best pitchers in the league. He's also one of the best hitters in the league. He'll be a free agent after this year. They say that he's going to get a contract for $500 million. That's going to be his contract, one guy. If you do that stuff, you got to charge a lot of money for baseball. I guess they're not going to be getting that money anymore. Or maybe they'll go bankrupt like Bally Sports did. Interesting times we live in, folks. Okay, sports, and UFOs. We've done sports. Now we've done sports. Now, UFOs. The latest thing, a UFO half the size of a football field in Southern California. Now you think, okay, this is no big deal. Okay, so the dopey people in Southern California saw another UFO. This is just not the dopey people in California. This was at a California Marine base in California, 29 Palms. In fact, a huge black triangular-shaped UFO hovering over 29 Palms Marine base was witnessed by over 50 Marines. This was in 2021, and the news is just now coming out. So they keep this stuff quiet for a while, and then they release it when they can't keep it quiet anymore. In fact, I've looked at the pictures. In fact, one stunning picture shot by an officer at Camp Wilson in 29 Palms back in April 20th, 2021, shows the apparently triangular object with lights on its edges above the desert mountains where it hovered for 10 minutes. That's according to witnesses. Kind of like the Phoenix Lights, almost identical to the Phoenix Lights some 30 years ago. Now, video shows the lights of what some Marines believe was a craft hanging in the dark sky shot between 8:24 and 8:30 p.m. on April 20th. And again, I've seen the photos, folks. It's if it's not, it's definitely a UFO. I have no idea what this is. Is this a spaceship from Mars? I don't know. But it's not flares. It's not swamp gas. It's not reflections. It's none of that. I'll tell you, it's none of that. Now, before they could fully illuminate the black triangle, it vanished without a trace. Just poof, gone. Now, soon after the encounter, Marines said dozens of trucks and multiple helicopters rushed to the area of the base. And choppers, you could hear choppers flying overhead until about 11:30 that night. Now, witnesses estimate that the unidentified object's size ranged between the size of a stealth bomber, which has a wingspan of 172 feet, to approximately half the length of a football field, which is what, 50 yards, 150 feet? That's about the same, okay? Now, Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp. Jeremy Corbell is a UFO journalist and movie maker. George Knapp, of course, he does Sundays on Coast to Coast. He's a news reporter with, is it KTLA in Las Vegas? I forget. But they've acquired 6 pieces of film footage that captured the events from 2 separate angles, as well as an accompanying photograph, which they're releasing through their podcast called Weaponized. Now, the footage recorded by Marines using their smartphone cameras appears to depict 5 lights arranged in a triangular formation. Now, the incident has echoes of the infamous Phoenix Light case, as I said. This was a huge sighting of triangular-shaped UFO over the city of Phoenix in 1997. I said 30 years ago, more like 25, 26. Witnesses included then Arizona Governor Fife Symington. Because remember, he joked about it at first and then came back and said, look, I shouldn't have joked about it. It wasn't the right thing to do. This thing was a UFO. So the governor of the state said, yeah, the Phoenix Lights was a real thing. Now, a mortar man who was serving at Camp Wilson during the 2021 incident spoke with Jeremy Corbell and took a high-exposure photo on his smartphone, which revealed an outline of the objects. Now, the object appears to be triangular, surrounded by lights spaced evenly around its edge in a V formation, again, like the Phoenix Lights. Now, this guy who told the Daily Mail he wants to stay anonymous because he described one of his companions who witnessed the object, said it materialized from nowhere. Now, one of my buddies was outside. He was looking outside, and he said it just kind of appeared out of nowhere. Didn't come up over the horizon. It was just kind of there. And we all came out and looked at it, and slowly, like 50-plus people started coming out and looked at it. In fact, those lights just came out of nowhere. That's what the Marine said. Now, he added that despite their military experience, none of the Marines could recognize what it was. The Marine mortar man, filmed the photograph of the object and said, look, if you look at the picture, you can see the black triangular shape. I've seen the picture, and you can. Now, with this picture I took, the black triangular shape underneath the lights, it's definitely not any type of a flare or something that illuminates the lights, okay? The witnesses said that the apparent object appeared stationary for approximately 10 minutes. But a Marine can be overheard on one of the videos saying that the triangular object appeared to be in motion. So there's a little bit of a controversy there. Some say it never moved. Some say it moved. Maybe it depends on the angle. I don't know. Another Marine who the Daily Mail is keeping anonymous as well, he's keeping his name anonymous, was serving as an artilleryman at the base when he saw the UFO. In fact, this Marine firmly rejected any suggestions that the lights could be attributed to illuminating rounds fired by artillery or any other mundane explanation. This was something none of us had ever seen before. It was a completely different color, and the size and illumination was different, he said. Now, when we shoot illumination rounds, because he does this, okay, when we shoot illumination rounds, it's one. You shoot in the air, let it drop, then you shoot another one. This was 5 next to each other. They're kind of reddish, and illumination round is a yellow-white color. So they're even a different color than illumination rounds. And this guy should know because he shoots illumination rounds, okay? Now, the artilleryman compared the UFO size to a stealth bomber, while the mortarman described it as equivalent to a 3-bedroom house. Another witness who spoke with Jeremy Corbell likened it to being approximately half the size of a football field. Again, 50 yards, 172 feet, same, okay? Witnesses also reported additional peculiar lights circling the object throughout the encounter. They can faintly be viewed in the footage, but they're not real clear. Now, illumination rounds were eventually fired over the UFO by the Marines, and those were captured in one video. So you can see the illumination rounds versus the red lights, and they're different. But before the object could be illuminated, poof, it disappeared. In fact, the mortarman described the object. Those 2 orange lights, the actual illumination rounds, they went over the top of the UFO, and then after that, it just disappeared. Like just straight, it went black, and then helicopters started hauling ass towards it. And then they started circling the area. Now, the artilleryman said he witnessed a convoy of over 60 military trucks joining the helicopters traveling to the location after the incident. In fact, these helicopters were circling for a good bit afterwards. But there was a convoy as well that went out. 60-plus trucks went out to the area. Again, these are the Marines saying this, okay? This isn't George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell. These are the Marines who saw it. Now, The mortar man told Corbell, he said, I don't think it was anything U.S. military. It was definitely some type of UFO, and the government was trying to look for it after it disappeared. I'm just trying to figure out what the hell that was. I've never seen anything like it. Now, again, speaking to the Daily Mail, Jeremy Corbell said, he's spoken to numerous witnesses. He claimed the incident has not been reported to the U.S. government's UFO investigating office, also known as the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. That's a new one. I've never heard of that one before. But due to the location of this mass UFO sighting within the restricted airspace of one of our active U.S. military installations, significant amounts of data was accumulated, and this includes radar, thermal, electro-optical, and signature intelligence. This is according to Jeremy Corbell. He told the Daily Mail this. Now, on-base documentation is also presumed with high confidence to have been generated due to protocol and witness-observed response. In fact, this case has not been properly reported through the active U.S. investigation channels, the UAP channels, okay? That's under the authority of the Department of Defense, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, which is part of the whole UAP disclosure deal. Now, AARO has now been informed of this presumed inclusion. If the public wants answers and to understand more about this UAP encounter, we will need to encourage our representatives to ask questions and push for answers. Now, you think to yourself, okay, this is just reported, Strong. Why are you so upset about no disclosure? Well, this happened over 2 years ago, and it's just now coming out. And again, all you have to do is just Google 29 pounds UFO, okay? And you'll see all kinds of photos. You can go to the Daily Mail website if you want to, but there's no need for that. Just Google 29 pounds UFO, and you will see these pictures. And again, it's a UFO, UAP. It's unidentified flying object or unidentified aerial phenomenon, whatever you want to call it. Could it be one of ours? Maybe. The Marines said that it wasn't because they know our stuff. But to be fair, these guys aren't colonels in the Marine Corps. Okay, they're enlisted men, so they don't know everything. Did they turn off the lights and that's why they disappeared? Don't know. If they didn't want to be seen, why'd they turn the lights on to begin with? And it's funny because if it's our stuff, okay, let's say this is ours, and we don't want anybody to know about it. Why would you fly with the lights on? Now, with the Phoenix Lights incident, they didn't. But the sky was such that you could see the shadow against the night sky. Probably can't do that in the desert. But if it's ours, why would they? And they don't want it to be seen. Why would they fly with the lights on? If it's a foreign country, probably an enemy flying something in our territory, that's a big deal. Let's say it's the Chinese or the Russians, and they're flying something over 29 pounds Marine base. That's not on the coast, folks. That's way inland, okay? If it's somebody else and we don't know who it is, that's a huge deal. That's a breach of our national security. And if it's from someplace else, another world, another dimension, another anything, and we don't know what it is, that means we're defenseless against it. And that, too, is a big deal. If the government is one thing, they want to have their finger on the pulse of absolutely everything. And my personal belief is not only do they not have their finger on the pulse of this, but they haven't got a clue, which is why they don't talk about it. The government is very good about making up lies or explaining something away with a yarn, okay? They can't do that with this. Some people say we need full disclosure. Friends, I think we may have already had full disclosure. And you think to yourself, no, Strong, we can't have had full disclosure. If we had full disclosure, we would know what this is, what's going on. The government would have told us. I think we've had full disclosure because this is the one time I really do think the government is telling the truth when they say, hey, we have no idea what this stuff is. Not a clue. And if you think about it, if that's the fact, if they really don't know what this is, friends, that's full disclosure. And all we can do is just hope to God that whatever this is or whoever this is doesn't decide to turn on us. Well, that's it. That's it. I'm done. JamesStrongShow@hotmail.com. That's the email address, JamesStrongShow@hotmail.com. Send me your email address. I will send you a link to the podcast. You can download it and listen to it at your leisure, or just go on to the 8.5 billion different sites that you can pick up the podcast on. I mean, there's a whole lot of them. There's so many of them, they're just not even worth mentioning. Wherever you get your podcasts, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Spreaker.com, Podcaster, any of the above, some of the above, all of the above. That's it. I'm done. Have a good weekend, folks. Until next time, this is James Strong saying adios.